Welcome into Emerald and Lilywhite. This is episode 25. It's been a minute since we've recorded. Weren't able to connect on Sunday or Monday as a group, but there's a lot to talk about. So we appreciate everybody's patience as we got schedulings or various schedules aligned and sorted out. But yeah, like I said, we got a couple matches we're going to want to talk about here, and we're going to have to dig back a little bit. But with me tonight, first I'll bring my co-host Max at Going Limbs in. Max, what's up, man?
Not much. Just figured that it's definitely time to talk about our two losses last week, and then I don't know. It seems like a lot of discourse is happening around the club as
Yeah.
a whole. So yeah, it'll be an interesting podcast for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, a lot to get to. And then with us as well as Robbie at Robbie_Light and Robbie Light on Twitter. Robbie, what's up?
Not much. I think, it's a weird time too, obviously with the international break. So that's just been like a dull lull. I'm also a Seahawks fan. They had a bye week. So they were off and they had some crazy news today too. I am a Kraken supporter. I've actually been to their last 3 games. They've won all 3 of those games after being on a weird slide. So they're all over the place too. So it's just a very weird period of sports fandom for me.
Fair. Well, yeah, Spurs certainly won't help at all. Let's jump into it. First, we're just going to go back to Galatasaray. We haven't podcasted since that match down in Istanbul. But Spurs fall to Galatasaray 3-2, as we said, in Istanbul in an away match. Goals, Osimhen bags 2. And then Agun, I believe is the pronunciation, had an absolute banger for them, as we probably all recall. And then Will Langsher gets his debut goal for the first team, which is fantastic. Really happy for Will. And then Solanke draws us back to within 1, but we can't quite get it done. Max, I'm going to come to you first. What is your overall take of what you saw? We'll get into it in a little bit more depth, but just from 30,000 feet, what do you make of that match?
Yeah, so like originally my take was like, okay, like this is a match that like we didn't really need to win. We didn't put out our strongest team. And honestly, Galatasaray looked pretty poor and we were just worse. We just were all over the place, and obviously it's a tough place to play. And then like Lancashire getting the red card was quite unfortunate. So after the game, I was like fine with it. Like, okay, we're not gonna like go 8-0 in the group stage. It's fine. Like we're still gonna be fine and get top 8. But then when the weekend rolls around and then you lose that game, it just like it changes the meaning of this game too, because it's like now we fucking lost both games. And we rested players for the weekend against Ipswich, which I think is probably a worse team than Galatasaray, if I was to go out on a limb and say that.
I would say
So then we rested for a worse football team and ended up losing. So we've squandered 2 chances, and I thought this game was super winnable. Like we looked better than them with 10 men. So
yeah,
it just like kind of ruined it. I was like, okay, finally it's a Spurs loss where it's like, okay, yeah, like we all get it. Like we're going to drop some. We're losing this game. We can move on. It wasn't a fucking Spurs loss where everyone's panicking and I'm seeing Ange out tweets. But now we had the worst loss of the season. So this like not as bad loss now just looks way worse in hindsight with what happened at the weekend. So and now it's all compounded on top of each other, and there's definitely some panic happening.
Yeah, Robbie, what about you? Is this loss in Galatasaray something we need to put anything into, or do we just move on?
Yeah, I think it's agree with Max. It's a little muddy now. I mean, again, like obviously didn't start a full strength squad, but still had decent starters in the Galatasaray game. And I don't know anything about Galatasaray to know. Like I'm assuming they had a pretty full strength squad, like probably everyone firing for them. But yeah, on its own, not as worrying. Like Max said, like can't expect to go 8-0 in the group stage, and at this point, even we're probably still going to win 2 to 3 more of the remaining games, if not all of them. I would assume we're still going to be in a decent standing no matter what happens. I don't expect us to not make the elimination round no matter what seed we are. Yeah. But yeah, the Ipswich one really just super annoying to like compound all of it. But yeah, I don't know. The stadium was terrifying. The Galatasaray Stadium, obviously. Just a whole different environment. And then, yeah, we talked about this in the group chat. I don't know what the thought process is, and you guys have some good counterpoints on it, but just like, what's the point of like starting kind of weak and then having to bring on our strong players anyway to try to chase a game? Then no one ended up getting any rest really because we had to bring on all the studs essentially to try to catch up, and then it obviously fell short. But so I think that's a twofold. We lost the game and we lost time from our players that maybe needed some rest or could have gotten some rest, and just seemed a little strange. And we'll get to the Ipswich game in a minute, so I don't want to jump to talking about that more, but I think it's what Max said is exactly right. Like, it's just because of the second loss, it now looks a lot worse.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think if you remove the Ipswich of it all and just look, at Galatasaray through a vacuum, it's kind of just whatever. We don't expect to, again, as you guys have both said, go 8-0 in the group. This is probably where you look on paper as somewhere you could potentially drop points, and then you figure it's October, November at this point, and injuries are always going to take a toll. So you figure you're going to have to rotate. And as much as I would have loved for us to go out and put our best squad out there and show the field that we're the favorites to win the Europa League for a reason and give Galatasaray, a good beating at home, but we didn't do that for whatever reason. I mean, obviously injuries are part of that for sure in this scenario, but I would have preferred for us to go out and really take it to them. We don't. Here we are. But yeah, as you both said, then we get to Ipswich and it becomes evident that, something needs to pick up amongst the squad. I would say there was just a serious lack of, I guess, accountability. Maybe that's not the right word, but just intensity for sure from the jump in this match. It just didn't seem like we were up for it. And certain trend that we've talked about, Robbie, I'll come back to you for this because you've always brought this up, but Spurs drop another match right before an international break against a team that they should be beating, 99 out of 100 times. So what do you make of that little trend?
Yeah, no, I know I've mentioned this before. I listen heavily to another Spurs podcast, and they talked about it in their episode. This is the 5th straight time Tottenham has lost going into an international break. And they were starting to ponder if this has anything to do with a lot of our players just really checking out and protecting themselves because they want to play for their country and they're excited to play for their country and they don't want to do anything too crazy to hurt themselves or miss time by, playing for their country. But yeah, certainly just at this point, I think we joked about it even on the last podcast, like it's an international break. What's going to happen? Almost every other time it was an away game, though, right? And this was at home, right? Like we lost to Ipswich at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which I think makes it infinitely worse because if there's any positive of the season, like, well, we're winning most of our home games, just the away games we somehow lay an egg, and now we've laid an egg at home. But yeah, I don't know if there's something to be said about players resting up, saving up. Obviously, mentality as a whole questioned of like, this is now the second team this year. What that was a bottom feeder team that we should have easily handled that we've lost to. Winless team. I can't remember the name of the player on Ipswich, but they brought this up on the Talk Tottenham podcast that there was a player on Ipswich. It might have been one of the guys that scored, but he wasn't even born yet the last time they won a Premier League game. So just stats like that. But yeah, just letting us stew for 2 weeks after a loss like that is all too common. And the positive news of all of this is there's not another international break until March. So we're on reprieve until then, and expect Tottenham to go on a run in December and smoke all of our games, I guess. But
I love it. Yeah, I completely agree with everything you're saying. Max, you brought it up, and so we'll come back to you for this, obviously, but Spurs hand Ipswich their first loss of the season. We tend to do that this season, it appears, right? Who did we just hand their first loss? 2 matches before this, 3 matches before. Oh, Palace. Their first win. Sorry. So it's the second team we've given the first win of the season to absolute bottom feeders. Does this begin to worry you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, how can it not? Like, it's not so much the losses. Okay, maybe it is so much the losses, but it's also just like the performances are just pathetic. Like, it's literally like dead. Like you would think that someone's dog just died in the dressing room and before the game, the way that these lot are playing in the game. Like, I have never, like, in the Palace game, in this game, we hardly had a fucking attack in either one of those games. It's like we scored off a corner. I think we went 1 for 12 off corners in this game. I don't even know if that's considered a win that we finally scored one. It's like a miracle, honestly. And it's just the most dead thing. And the most frustrating part is that the goals we concede are just like literal brain like lapses from our defense. Like, it's not even like we're giving up chances or giving up space because of the system we're playing. It's nothing like, oh, the fullbacks are pushed up so high. No, it's just people are in the box not paying attention. That's what it is. That's what it was against Palace, and that happened twice against Ipswich. And the craziest part is I saw this going around Twitter. It's like showing the back post, the back right side of the box, and it shows a frame of 4 of our last 4 goals in the last 4 games, all coming from the exact spot in the back right where the guy had the overhead kick where Mateta scored against Palace. This is an area where we should be defending, and these guys have like eons to score. And the 2 players that you really look at there is Porro and Romero, who have both been fucking horrible recently.
Dude, thank you. That I wanted to talk about that because Porro and Romero are defensive liabilities at this point.
Liabilities, absolutely.
It's crazy to me. We talked about this in the group chat, and I know if Chang was here, he'd love to get in on this. But Romero, in my opinion at least, this is not coming from Chang, this is coming from me, but I think Romero's a fantastic ball-playing and ball-winning center back, and that's kind of where I draw the line at this point. And those are great attributes to have, but the way that we play – we're going to need people to defend well because there's not going to be a whole lot of manpower back there at any given time. So the spatial awareness is just a problem for me from those 2. It's really frustrating. I've heard people blaming Brendan Johnson. Like, okay, sure, but
maybe on that one goal, but like this is a consistent thing between those 2 players. Like, okay, one goal Brendan could have. But it wasn't even his fault. It was probably 33% his fault, if anything. And the other 66% were the 2 fucking guys that have been costing us goals for the past month. So
yeah, 100%. Robbie, I'm going to ask you a question that it's unfair that you get asked this one because this is a hard question to answer, but I'm coming to you. Romero, let's say a bid comes in for $75 million. Are you taking that, or are you telling the suitor that Romero's not for sale?
I mean, on paper, it feels like an easy answer, but I didn't say anything in the chat today about, but I was just like, where do we go from there? Like, if we sell him, what do we do? We've got literally nothing to replace him with. I mean, Dragishin, I guess, is the starter now, but like we all know, he's nowhere near ready to be a finished product, it seems. So what do? We probably turn around and spend that money on just another center back and have to spend all of that money on just another center back. So what is the benefit? It's not like we're going to buy 3 players with that money. I don't think. I don't know. Maybe Daniel Levy will do his normal thing, but it's like if we sell Romero, we just buy another Romero essentially, and then we're in the same place, and he has to learn the system. And again, maybe he'll be better at the system. Maybe all the points we raised in the group chat today are fair, that Romero is just totally checked out. He thinks this project's going nowhere. He doesn't want to play here anymore, or, whatever that may be. He thinks he's wasting the prime years of his career at Tottenham when he could be winning trophies in Spain. I don't know. All of that's maybe fair, but yeah, my first initial thought is like, well, what do we do to replace it? We just make ourselves infinitely worse very quickly. and then have nothing to really spend it on unless I saw a few links this week on Twitter of like, I don't even remember what team, a couple other Premier League defenders that are, maybe not even starters on their current team, but it was like, oh, he might be available on a free transfer. And it was like, okay, do we really want to go down that rabbit hole where we're just filling in pieces again? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough spot. I said this to you guys in the group chat. I was shocked to open Twitter this week and see a ton of discourse amongst Tottenham fans saying like, oh, Romero's on his way out. We're going to sell him. We're going to get rid of him. And I'm just like, where is that coming from? I'm surprised to see all that. But if it's about his effort, if it's about his desire to be here, I guess that's a different story. But I had heard none of this information really until everyone was just chatting about it on Twitter of like, well, we're going to get rid of him. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But
well, there was some fuss like preseason. I think Scott and I addressed it about how him coming back from the Copa America, his plane or some shit, and he was fucking complaining about his plane from Argentina or something. And then now it's just like the Real Madrid rumors for both those two players. Porro, we haven't really discussed because Romero, like, it's like we concede it and it doesn't even look like he gives a fuck that we're conceding. Like he's just like, okay, all right, I just let in a goal ball watching for the 85th time in 2024, but it's fine. I don't care. Just all the rest of you do, I guess. And you have to reap what I sow. But it's just really like, and then he goes to Argentina today injured, like he's been nursing injuries, whatever. He was injured for a bit. And then he gets fucking injured at Argentina in the first half of his game. Like, why are you going to Argentina again? Just stop. Like, you're hurt. And it just every sign and like what I've been hearing, this isn't just me like blindly following signals, like what Robbie said all over Twitter, like legitimate reporters and stuff are like, Christian Romero, like it's not looking good for his long-term future at Spurs. I'm not saying we're going to sell him in January, but it just feels like he has no passion for the club anymore. And I think this summer, if we get a knock from a big club, then I mean, feel free to have him. Like we can figure out a succession plan then or in January potentially, but I doubt it. And then we also got like Ashley Phillips and Luka Vucevic coming back next summer, so we can reevaluate like the depth part of it there. Because I don't know if we want to touch on Dragusin. I think Porro first, then him, but he has also been terrible. So I don't know what the plan is with him, but he's been really bad as well. So I don't know. I'm at a loss for that department. So just praying that Van de Ven gets back as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I prefer Davies at this point if
Van de Ven for sure
not able to go. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to what both of you are saying. I mean, I look at his contract. It runs through the summer of 26. And so we've got 18 months. I would be absolutely shocked if he re-signed.
Next summer's the cash-in period.
Yeah. So if you don't sell him next summer, you're going to lose him on a free 100%.
Can't do that.
I'd be very, very, very surprised if he signed another deal because, again, he's going to walk into a lot of teams and a lot of teams that will win trophies. So I don't see him sticking around after what we're starting to see pan out this year. And again, we could go win the Europa League, and that's a wonderful trophy to win. And I don't know if that changes things or not, but I just don't think he'll resign. And
can we talk about the contract for a second? Because we've had Christian Romero. What is it? Has it been like 4 years? Like, actually, my concept of time is all screwed up. Has it been like 2-3 years at this point?
3 years, I think.
Like, I think last year, like we had him with Conte since 2022 at least. It's about to be 2025. I think last year, even like if we wanted to get an extension, it would have had to been like last year. And now we've waited so long to get this extension that he's almost like become too good for us to even like get him re-signed. So it begs the question for other players. Like Van de Ven, I trying to pull up right now when his contract goes until, but if it is like 2027 or 2028, like can we just 29? Okay, then never mind. But for those players that you really think are going to be good, like just extend them now. Like just please get extensions in, because we don't want to have to keep dealing with this thing, this Harry Kane, Christian Romero of we have to sell them this summer or else they're going on a free, because it's a disaster every time, I feel like.
Well, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I just Googled. I'm seeing Romero as under contract till 27, so he would be a free agent summer of 2027.
Oh, maybe I pulled it up, but it could have been incorrect.
Yeah, it's 27.
Oh, okay. So we have 2.5 years. Okay, so there's time. That changes the conversation. Sorry to the listener for that.
But it might be like I don't know. I can try and look up the contract details, but go on.
I know. I was going to say that I was going to confirm that Van de Ven is through 2029, according to what I'm reading here. So strong. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, like Robbie said, there has to be some sort of succession plan in place. You're not replacing a Christian Romero very easily. Obviously, he's a World Cup winner, and he starts for Argentina. I do understand the passion that he shows to playing for his country, and I can't fault him for that. I mean, especially in Argentina, they're football mad, and he's always going to put Argentina before Spurs, which, again, I can't really fault him for that. I know there's that whole Harry Kane debate that's been all over the interwebs and talk shows and stuff about his comments, England before club and all of that. But I think when we're talking Nations League, like sometimes I think Harry Kane defending Nations League and saying these players shouldn't take time off, when they could be playing for England, almost kind of supports this whole concept of there being way too much football played right now and way too much stress on these players. And like, do we really need the Nations League? I don't know. That's a question to leave as a rhetorical one for now. But anyways, yeah, let's move on. Two tough losses. We're going to leave it at that. It's a shitty deal. It's international break now. Spurs sit 10th in the table. This is going to lead us into some big picture conversation here, right? But Spurs sit 10th in the table. We're 5-5-1. That's 5 wins, 5 losses, and a draw for anyone who's counting. 12 points off the top, but only 3 points off of the race for top 4, which is very positive in some sense. It's also frustrating to know that we dropped all these points. I'm thinking Palace. I'm thinking Brighton. I'm thinking Ipswich now, right? Had we performed better in those matches, we'd be looking probably second, third place in the table right now. So it is a bit frustrating, but again, we're only 3 points off the top, but 10th place. So I think there's a lot of angles that can be taken from that, right? If we take a step back, Robbie, 10th place doesn't look good. We all can agree on that. But 3 points off the top, it's kind of a weird season, right?
Yeah, I think I've had this discussion for weeks now with my friends related to American football, that this is now the 3rd year of American football where they've played that extra game, and everyone is hurt this year. I play fantasy football. It is a nightmare. Every player is hurt. Everyone is injured. Major players this year have missed major time. Like even the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 9-0 or whatever, are winning games by like 1 point and scoring 16 points a game. Like, it's just the NFL stinks this year. It is just a giant cesspool. Like, every fantasy football league I'm in, every team is like 5-5 or 6-4, or like everyone is right with each other. And I think we can extrapolate that to European football also, of like all of these stupid international breaks, all of these dumb cups, all of these friendlies, all of these added competitions, these summer tours, these whatever. Like, players have never been playing more soccer in their life, high level soccer, competitive soccer, traveling all around the world to play it nonstop. Like, this is the worst time of year for European football. Like, every 2 to 3 weeks is another international break. It's just like insanity to me that we can't just get a stretch of games where players are just playing for their professional teams. And maybe that's what we're seeing in the Premier League finally, now that there's just a ton of, we've had a ton of injuries. Obviously, I think we're leading the league in minutes lost once again to injuries, things like that. But it's other teams are having moments too, or having issues. What is it? Is Arsenal missing Odegaard or somebody? Like he got hurt,
He's
like
back.
is he back? But
they have the
fakest
injury crisis ever. It was crazy.
Yeah. So like everyone's missing people, and that we need to start having conversations, one, about the health of players, and two, like the quality of the product, because like back to American football, to me, just abysmal this year, the quality of the product. And then with European soccer, obviously, yeah, there's a huge, 11 teams are within 1 point of each other right now for being in a top 4 spot. Only Liverpool seems to be pulling ahead, and they're healthy, right? I don't think they have any injuries. Last year they had a ton of injuries and they figured it out, but I think they're one of the only healthy teams in the Premier League, and that's why they're like head and shoulders above everyone else. City's had injuries too, I think, right?
Big time.
So yeah, this is probably an entire podcast long conversation, but I think at what point is the money enough? Like, how many more games can we force these guys to play and make the product competitive, make the product interesting to watch, make good teams stand out from each other? Obviously England, we can say is probably one of the most competitive league of the major 5 European leagues.
Yeah.
The gaps are getting smaller now every year, which is exciting in a way, but I think it's just a big mess because of maybe health, maybe because of just too much time for everyone to be playing. And yeah, Tottenham, easy answer for us because we're losing so many players to injury. That could be part of it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think a few things factor in here. I know Charlie Davies was going off about this morning on Morning Footy. Great show if anyone doesn't watch, but he was talking about how just passionate you feel about putting the crest on for your nation. And I totally understand that. I mean, I can tell you if I was in a situation where I was playing for a club anywhere and the US, I would put my duties to the US for sure before my club. But we're also kind of in this age where footballers are earning massive amounts of money now. The more you earn, the more you develop a certain lifestyle that must be maintained, right? And I think there's probably this fear in the back of their head too with international football that they could put themselves in a situation where they're no longer earning just crazy amounts of money every week for playing football, right? And that has to be considered, especially as families grow and responsibilities increase, right? I do understand that too. And so this is kind of on FIFA, in my opinion, not the individual organizations, in UEFA too, but I'm talking not on clubs, right? But or not FAs or anything who are planning these leagues, but more so the international tournaments that, again, are increasing in numbers. You have things, again, like the Nation League, like we've talked about, that now are painted as competitive, and guys like Kane come out and make comments about how important it is to show up for the country for these things. And these should just be time off for these guys, 1,000%. But like you just said, it's all about revenue generation. And, we live in a society where those things become more important than the health of individuals. And again, that's a whole nother conversation, as you said, but here we are. Let's bring it back to Spurs though, Max. Again, looking at the fact that we're 5-5-1. I think if we remove the 10th place and 3 points off the top of it all, we're 5-5-1, which tells me that the league is struggling from top to bottom. Robbie just talked a lot about why that is with injuries, right? But, I think what I'm really coming to you with is 5-5-1 does not make me feel good. Absolutely, in any way, shape, or form. How do you feel about that record?
Yeah, feel terrible about it, honestly, especially because throughout the entire year, what's the one theme that we've had? Let's rest players. Let's play the youngsters for the midweek games. Let's not even go full strength, I'd say, against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. Thank God we won that game, or else I would be having an even bigger meltdown on this podcast, because that tournament in the Europa League are the only things keeping me sane right now about Spurs. But the fact that we're resting players for these games week in, week out, we're resting our best team, our first 11, whatever you want to call it. We're playing our kids at the midweek, and then we're losing 5 of our first 11 games. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's a joke, dude. Like, no matter what way you slice it, that's absolute garbage. We lose to Arsenal at home. We lose to Ipswich at home. We lose to Crystal Palace. That was a terrible game. Okay, I'll throw out like a Newcastle loss. The Brighton loss was horrendous. That's all our losses.
And even the point dropped at Leicester for that draw.
Yeah, the draw against Leicester, that's a joke. The one loss I'll excuse is away to Newcastle. And now our fan base has become accustomed to, I guess, here's 3 points, Arsenal, at fucking White Hart Lane. I remember they didn't beat us at home for 10 years. Like, what the fuck is going on right now? And I'm kind of losing my mind over, like, the whole season right now. But just our Premier League performances have just been so subpar based on, like, what the expectation should be with, like, how the squad is being rotated by Ange. So I don't know what we're going to do to fix it, because it's not the footy. We're creating like some of the most chances, most XG in the league. It's not the defensive metrics, because I saw this metric on Twitter. It was like, how much space is each team offering in the defensive third? And it was like a red to blue, like graduated color scheme. And blue was more space, and Tottenham was one of the only teams in the league. It was like all red. It was so much red. We are not allowing that much space in the final third. And then you've got little Pedro Porro's pocket that's light blue, and then Romero, who are just straight up losing games for us. So it's not even the system. It's literally just players not playing good enough, and it's so frustrating, especially because of the rotation scheme that we've been seeing this year.
Well, that takes us all well said before I get to this, but yeah, that takes us into a conversation that we wanted to have about the bigger picture. Robbie had put together some thoughts in the chat today as we were starting to brainstorm the pod, and eventually we're going to get to the question, is this something that's just rooted within the club, what Max is talking about here? But before we really dig into that, I'll come to you. Obviously, these are your thoughts, and you just kind of talked a little bit about where we're at in the project, what should be expected, what can be expected, and maybe why some of this is happening. So I'll just pass it over to you. Open floor.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I have a strong opinion on this, but I think it's an interesting thing to think about, that when you zoom out on Ange's career and like realize where he's been, what he's done, the challenges he's faced, he struggled everywhere at the beginning. He's figured it out eventually. He has been fired at certain places, but then at his next job, he had figured certain things out. I think what I'm starting to piece together with this Tottenham team is, like, as we mentioned, all of those stats look great. The offense looks great. The XG looks great. I think we're the highest scoring team in the Premier League this year. Last I remember checking. All of those things, but as any coach should, or any manager should, as they're going through their career, you hit roadblocks and you have to learn and adapt. I think the strategy that Ange has had as a manager has worked everywhere he's been, and he's learning a piece of something everywhere he goes. And I think now that he's at Tottenham, he's never had a stop in his career, and I could just be broadly speaking or totally making this up, where like the players just weren't immediately 1000% bought in, heads against the wall, like just running for him. And I feel like we've seen clips of him just like laying into players in the locker room or being angry. I feel like I've never gotten that impression at Tottenham, that he's like just tearing into people or yelling at people. And maybe this first year and a half for him has been an experiment where he's waiting for someone to take the reign. He's waiting for someone to step up and be like, yes, we're bought in, we're it. I think maybe there's something to be said about Son being captain, of like, he's just a very quiet to himself guy. And maybe we need someone that is just going to be a fire bearer, torch bearer in the locker room for Ange. I don't know, but maybe Ange is learning it's time to start yelling at these guys, or like start really chewing them out, or getting people invested in this, because the mentality is very clearly the problem with the players. I think, we've all said that in 6 different ways the last couple episodes, is like the players seem to be not mentally geared up for certain moments or for certain games. And I think he's just praying somebody is going to, like, he wants his vision of this build to be like, the club heals itself, the club does it itself. And it's like, maybe he seemed pretty defeated after the Ipswich loss. I've seen a lot of content where like he like yelled at a fan because a fan was yelling at him from the stands or whatever. And it's like, that's what I want to see from him, is him to step that up. And I think, again, if we want to give him more patience, more time, it's been a year and a third or so since he's been here. Maybe we can't expect it to change overnight. And if Tottenham fires another manager, we've literally just wasted another year and a third and we've gone nowhere. But yeah, I think it's fair to be like, hey, we do need to expect more from Ange, but he's done that at every place he's been. He's had a moment of struggle, of toughness, of whatever, and he's finally figured it out. Again, I'm not in this locker room. I'm not even in that country. But my thought is he's starting to piece together this team needs a mentality boost, or they need a mentality something. And whether that's fixed through signing more players, getting other players out, whether that's fixed through him as a manager starting to step up more and like demanding more from people rather than letting the team try to govern themselves, which I feel like has been a, kind of his calling card, is like he lets teams govern themselves and build a hierarchy and build a, relationship. But yeah, ultimately, I think he's going to figure it out. And whether he figures it out because we fire him or he figures it out because we keep him is yet to be seen. I would personally rather we keep him and figure it out than fire him. And then he goes on to be Manchester United or, I don't know, whoever fires their manager again next. And he goes there and then they just start destroying the league because he has this next infinity stone of how to overcome this roadblock. And he learned it from us. And then we threw him to the curb, and that does seem to be a pattern for Tottenham managers sometimes, is like we let people come here and then leave and then they go on and succeed elsewhere. Or, lately that's not been the case, I suppose. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be said there of like, we're still a year and a half in. It absolutely freaking sucks where we are, but we've almost fixed nothing from a club standpoint since he's shown up. And so it hasn't been enough time to fix anything. I hate to keep using Arsenal as an example, but Arteta, 4 years or whatever until they were really flying. Yes, they were in some cup competitions or whatever, but there was even an article I read today just looking back at Pochettino of like his time and same story with him. Like, yes, he did have cup success where like they went to a final and I think in his second year and lost, but like at least there was an excitement there. But like, yeah, he finished 5th in his first season. So did Ange. I think his second season was a top 4 finish, but we're still technically in the hunt, so TBD. But yeah, and then Pochettino, we love and adore Pochettino in the lore of Tottenham, but he flamed out spectacularly at Tottenham. So like nobody's perfect. No one's had like a dream run at this club. So yeah, I've millions of questions floating in the air. I'm gonna keep saying let's hold out here, but I think that is my like key takeaway is like I think Ange is at his latest roadblock of his career, not just Tottenham. It's his career of like, this is a challenge as a manager I need to adapt to. I need to learn as a manager how to handle it. And I would rather he learns that lesson with us and then succeeds with us than throw him away and let him succeed somewhere else. So that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, Max, what do you think?
I'm going back to the leadership point you made, and our current like leadership trio or whatever, Son, captain, our 2 vice captains are Christian Romero and James Maddison, none of which look quite happy or interested to be playing for Tottenham right now. So I don't know. That could maybe change. Sonny aside, obviously love him with all my heart. I'm happy he's the captain. But maybe we need some other voices in there to kind of step up. Maybe Dejan Kulusevski, Dom Solanke, players like that who are actually showing up this season and performing. That would be pretty nice for me because Madison and Ange, who knows, like honestly, what's going on with them because it's seeming weirder by the day. And then Romero, we've talked about at length, but those are our 2 vice captains right now. And I can't say either of them look like they want to be here that badly.
Yeah.
I was just going to say quickly, that was something I was going to bring up earlier about Romero that they brought up on the other Tottenham podcast that, how long has he been here? 4 years now. He still hasn't learned fluent English. And that could be part of him just not caring or not buying in. But if he's going to be one of our leaders, he kind of has to speak English and like be able to communicate with our entire team. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of our players speak Spanish and, maybe that's a moot point, but it just maybe speaks to his level of buy-in that like he still doesn't do interviews in English. He doesn't, want like Porro has learned English. At least we can give him a tap on the shoulder for that. But yeah, they brought like Vicario is becoming probably the only vocal leader of the team. And you don't really want your goalie to be the only one yelling when he's at the other end of the pitch and no one else can hear him. So you want people in the middle of the pitch and the top of the pitch to also be pretty vocal. So yeah, I think that was just an interesting point made about Romero's maybe lack of buy-in, as he still isn't even committing to speaking the language of the country he's living in, I guess. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think the captain thing is an interesting conversation, and we can stop on it for a second. When you said earlier, maybe there's, I'm paraphrasing big time. When you said, maybe there's an issue with Sonny at captain, I was literally thinking the exact same thing as you said that. And I love Son, and I called for him to be the captain, but I do sometimes wonder if we're not at a stage where we can use a little bit more fire. And again, we don't see behind the curtain, right? But Sonny, maybe it would be good for him to just be our best player and not the captain, right? Because I think those two things carry a lot of weight in each of them, right? So I look at a guy like Vicario. I do think he would be somebody who would light a fire under the team. I don't think you just make somebody the captain though because they're able to do that. If somebody said right now I had to pick someone who I think should captain the team through the storm right now, it's Kulusevski. And he just seems to be that raw, hard dude that just, I don't know. I think back to that piece he wrote. I don't know if either of you saw it, but he wrote an article maybe a year ago. And it was awesome. And it's very clear that he is a very grounded, just hardworking dude. I would call it like a mentality monster, right? And that's the kind of guy you need in a moment like this. Just super, super grounded and strong dude, both physically and mentally. So anyways, it is interesting to think about whether or not we could have some issues with that leadership group, which as you both mentioned, kind of all have question marks around their leadership right now for very different but various reasons, right? So yeah, anyways. But then I also think about the fact that, as we talked about many times on this show, we are in a project. We logically would want to use the Premier League as more of that opportunity to keep furthering the project where you can't win or lose the entire season in one day like you can in some of these cup competitions. So I do look at the fact that we should go far in the Europa League and are now in the quarterfinals of the League Cup, right? And there's some super good stuff going on. Like you said, Robbie, Arsenal took a while to get to where they are, but they won a couple trophies along the way, and that buys you the time, in my opinion, that you need to get 5 or 6 years to get it figured out, right? Yeah. So at some point, Andy's going to have to bring something in, and we have opportunities to do that right now. So it's not all doom and gloom. We are a year and a half into a project. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Sacking Ange Postecoglou would be the worst thing this club could ever do right now. It'd be another 18 months wasted, as you said. How many millions of dollars wasted on players that we brought in specifically for him, and we'd be flat on our ass trying to figure out where to go from here for the 4th or 5th time in a row since Pochettino left the club, right? So anyways, we just need to stay calm and patient and let things play out. Max, we go to City at the end of the international break, November 23rd. It's in the Premier League. It is not the Carabao Cup this time. So, a little bit of a different vibe to it, but we do end up getting City again as we come back from this break. What's your outlook looking into this thing? What do you expect?
Yeah, I think we're going to lose, probably handily. Yeah, not confident at all for this game. So, they just saw us, and they were playing a fairly strong squad. I'd say so were we, but they weren't playing Holland, so that's one thing that's a bit scary. And I don't know if I want Pep Guardiola to have just played us less than a month before he plays us again. Yeah. Feels like a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, especially with I don't know. It's Pep, man. It's Pep. It's Man City. They're in a bit of a rut right now. They've lost 4 in a row, which is absolutely unheard of. I can't see them ever losing 5 games in a row because that's not what they do. So we're going to lose, but it'll be certainly an interesting game. We could still gain some morale, maybe get a draw or something, but I'm not feeling super confident at the moment. And also, do we want to like quickly discuss like Rodrigo Bentancur is
Just
out
thinking that, yeah,
for
that.
a while, I think like 8 games, 7
Seven
games.
matches, well, I think I saw
7 games.
7 matches.
7 domestic games, and it happens to also include our quarterfinal game against Manchester United. So, yeah, it will be a minute before we see Bent's back. At least in England, he'll obviously play Europa League, but there's only 2 Europa League games during that span, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, we'll miss him. He's been good. I will say briefly while we're on the subject, while it's frustrating, he said some stupid shit that, not only shouldn't be said, but shouldn't be believed or practiced or thought, right? Or whatever it is. So, in one hand, again, it's frustrating, but he asked for it. And I know there's a lot of talk about, well, Enzo Fernandez and Chelsea, and there's no suspension there. And that's correct, but it doesn't justify, what Bentancur did on video. So,
and the reason, so the reason, like I've seen this as well. The reason that's the case is because Enzo did it during the international competition. So it's like that's up to the CONMEBOL, or is that South America? Yeah, so that's up to them. And Bent's did it before it started, so it's up to domestic policy. And like, if I know the CONMEBOL at all, I doubt Enzo will be receiving any sort of any sort of punishment at all. So like obviously we don't condone either action, and I think what Scott is getting at, before I let him finish, is that in a vacuum, like, we're not complaining about this. This is absolutely a valid punishment. He was being a fucking idiot and super insensitive, and it's a valid punishment. And it's also frustrating because of the context of greater things in like the football in England. Greater misdeeds have been done and gone unpunished. So that's where the frustration comes. But for the punishment and the action itself, I think it's fair, honestly, and he's learned his lesson, hopefully.
Yeah, completely agree. Really well said. Back to City, though. We will have no Rodrigo Bentancur, as we just talked about, Robbie. What are your prospects? Are you feeling any better than Max is about this?
I had a moment where I was feeling like, I'm going to say this as a joke, but I was like, please, can we just get a draw for once this season? Can we just not lose? Can we get a draw somehow? But then I started thinking, obviously anything involving Haaland is like 4 goals minimum. And our center backs are a nightmare right now. So no one's going to beat him to a header on a set piece. No one's going to, it's just like, all right, well, Haaland's going to have 2 or 3 probably. So I don't know. In a perfect world, we'd reenact that 3-3 draw last year, but I don't know, 4-2 City, I guess, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, if I'm Haaland, I'm staying super just incognito at all points in time in the match, and making sure that I'm right there by Romero and Porro at all times when my team has the ball, and I should find a goal or 2. But then I thought, well, you could also go in between Romero and Dragoshin, and then I was like, oh shit, you could also go between Dragoshin and Udogie and probably find goals too. So it's really just a problem across the
or
entire
just like line. Just pass the ball to Dragoshin, and like probably it's going in for City somehow. So he'll play you a 1-2 right in on goal. So just find him.
Can we also talk briefly about how his agent came forward and was like, he's so happy at Tottenham right when he was really starting to stink?
Yeah, exactly. That was right after his agent said that he's not playing enough and could be interested in
Van de Ven gets hurt. Oh, I'm so happy. That's why you're here, bro, to play when he's hurt. Like,
like that whole thing from his agent. Radu's what, 22, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
He's still young.
And you're behind Romero and Van de Ven, who are on their good days, maybe the best duo in the Premier League. I think you look at Van Dijk and probably Ruben Dias as the two best center backs, but they're not a pair, right? And so I use that word pairing. But anyways, yeah, tough on Roddy, but he's young and he'll get his opportunities. But yeah, it's been shaky for him. It's been a little shaky for Udogie too. Like I mentioned, I do put some of that on believing that he's maybe still fighting back from an injury that he's kind of never fully recovered from. He just looks to be.
He just plays so many games.
He played so many games. He was injured significantly at the end of last season. And he, like, the best way I can explain Udogie is it looks like he like pulled himself off the charger and should say 100%, but it's like 80. Like he can't get more than like 80% charged up right now because again the injuries and the amount of matches that he's played. So he'll get it figured out. I got high hopes for Udogie. But anyways, yeah, should be a heyday for Holland. I'm gonna say like 3-1. I'm gonna say 3-2 actually, which I may be able to hang my hat on when all is said and done, right? But I'm gonna go 3-2 City. I don't expect a result. At this point, whatever. We can win, we can lose, and I'll just be like, give me the next cup match. So that probably tells you
Timo Werner brace is what we're gonna expect. Yeah.
Hey, I'll take
Is
it.
he
right?
Playing?
Yeah, probably. Who knows? If he gets a brace.
Yeah. Also report like it seems very likely that Timo is going in January, like confirmed. Yeah. I don't know. I can't cite the exact source, but it was actually legit. Mm-hmm. Like I think so. Thank God. And they cited Yang in the article as one of the reasons for that. So that's exciting.
Good.
Yeah, I just looked and saw that Werner is like the 4th highest paid player on the club right now.
It's actually nauseating. Yeah. I was talking about that when our first podcast. I always talk about this. Yeah. Our first podcast, first segment was Timo Werner bringing him back. What are we thinking? So that's what me and Scott kicked this podcast off, and we're like, oh, this dude is getting paid how much a week? Like it's honestly insane, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I was just gonna kick it up to you guys. Like, what positions for January? Like, we're a month and a half out from January. We need players for sure. What positions are you guys looking at? And then, if so, do you have your eye on players? I know we've had some links in the last couple of days. Kubo is one that Robbie sent, and then Grealish. Like Grealish has been linked to us, but I don't think that's January. That's going to be next summer if it happens. But yeah.
I think left back is the easy answer. We need a cover or I guess maybe we're going to let Jed play more, or like, is there, I think I remember seeing this. Isn't there, can't we in the Europa League, like halfway through the competition, like update the roster as like maybe
after
going
the group stage?
Yeah. So like maybe, that'll be a better decision that we make. But yeah, left back, clearly, I guess center back is still not fixed. I saw links to Tariq Lamptey again.
Oh, I did see that.
So that would be right back cover for Porro. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we've signed a million wingers, but we still never have any.
We totally need a winger. Yeah.
So it's just like, I don't know. I don't know where we go there. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any position I wouldn't mind an upgrade or another body in, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about left back actually, and that's because I do think Jed Spence will be listed in the Europa League squad, and he is injured right now too, which is I keep forgetting, right? But so he'll come back, and I think we'll have plenty of cover for Udogie in the form of Jed Spence and/or Archie Gray, who seems to be covering for Pedro Porro. I think those are two really good backup fullbacks to have. It's like if I'm thinking if I'm playing Football Manager, I always got to have a backup fullback on each side on the bench, and those are two guys. I look, they're probably all blue with maybe a couple dots of green, right? And perfect, good to go. And I also think that Jed will be listed to the Europa League squad firmly in the sense that when I look at Fraser Forster, it's well known that he's like the glue within the locker room. Like he's everybody's guy, and it's well documented, right? So I think you got to give a guy like that a couple of games throughout a season if humanly possible. I believe Vicario started the first, if not the first and second Europa League match.
Yeah, he did.
He did. And so I think Ange said, look, I got to ensure that we get off to a good start. If we do, I can get Frazier, a couple of games in the Europa League, but at the business end of the season, Vicario's playing every Europa League knockout match, in my opinion. And so I think that's where you take Frazier off the Europa League. You say, look, I did what I could. I had you through the group stage. I got to do what's best for the squad now. So you're almost doing Big Frazier a favor by giving him a couple cup matches, I think. And it'll be Jed for sure. It has to be. I'd be just furious if Jed Spence is not on the Europa League roster for the theoretical knockouts that we still need to qualify for. So we'll say that.
And there might be a spot anyway, like if Werner goes and we don't sign anyone there, Yang can be he's under 21. He's like 19, so we don't have to register him. So that could be an open spot.
No, it really.
Hopefully we sign someone, right? So
I was just gonna say to answer your question, it's the wing position for me is like an absolute must. I think we're pretty stacked in the midfield for sure. I don't have any concerns.
Yeah, I'm chill with the midfield as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see Bergvall get up to speed a little bit more quickly, but he's 18 and I'm not unrealistic as a person either. So whatever. But I think we're deep enough. We really need dynamic wingers. I don't even think Sonny is like dynamic necessarily. He can be, but that's not his like go-to game, right? He's a finisher. He's a poacher, like an inside forward almost is what I would call Sonny. I need somebody like an Odebear who we still have in the ranks, right? But I love Kubo. I think that's an excellent link. I'm a huge fan of his. And I haven't seen any Grealish news. I haven't been paying attention to Twitter for the last couple of weeks either, but Grealish should be a wonderful, wonderful signing in my opinion. I think he's the exact profile that we're looking for. And so I'm sure Ange is telling the club if there's any way to bring him in, please. Like I need someone like him right now. And I think Kubo's probably a fairly similar profile. So love to bring
plus 20 mil for Romero.
Done. Not in January though. You know what? It's not going to get worse at the back. So whatever, just do it.
Hey, score 6, give up 5, as long as you score more. You know.
And I would imagine that we're looking closely at the center back position. I mean, Ben Davies is in. I think actually the dude's got a few more years still, so I don't want to say the very twilight of his career, but he's a fucking grinder, and I think he's got it in him to keep going for a little while. But that doesn't mean he should be our option for the next 2 or 3 years either. I could see him going back to Swansea perhaps, right? And playing for a few more years. But
his contract expires in June. So
so there you go.
It's the end of the road for Gentle Ben, but he can have a good last season. Hopefully get him a trophy for God's sake.
10 years at the club, I think, if not 11.
I think 11 and 25 probably. But last thing I wanted to say, Archie Gray could get some minutes at the 6 during this Bentancur spell out. So that's something to watch for. He's obviously like not got the pace to be an outside back like in his prime. But his like on the ball skill is obviously there, and he's been awesome this season, even playing out of position. And then the last thing I was going to say is, how would we feel about a Bergvall loan?
Yes. Immediate answer.
Because that's what I'm thinking too. I think, look, it didn't work out in fall. Like you're clearly not up to the standard right now, or the mentality isn't there. Let's get him a loan in England. Like, why is it so hard for us to fucking get players Premier League loans? Like, please get this man a loan. And I think that would be great.
Robbie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, the midfield is overly stuffed. I think, again, assuming we want to give Archie Gray more time in the midfield, I mean, I know he doesn't play the same position as Bergvall, but I would rather see Archie Gray get more minutes as a 6 than try to, I don't know. It's hard to say with Bergvall. Again, he's just so young, and or at least Archie Gray's played or was he in the championship? I guess he wasn't technically in the Prem. But I don't know what team would be a good fit for Bergvall. But that's interesting. Yeah, he needs minutes, clearly, I think. And I think we've seen him on the pitch, and like when he was crying when he got pulled when Radu Dragusin got the red card, I think he's been very emotional about it, of like he really wants to show that he's deserves this. So would love to give him more time to actually get some rhythm and actually start putting it together.
Yeah.
And if
I agree with. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I was just gonna say, if we sign like fullback defender reinforcements, then Archie can play the 6, and with I think Basuma is the better option at 6 because Bentancur like can totally play 8, and I think is more of a natural 8 anyway. And would be like a good balance if we're for Madison or Kulisevsky or whoever it may be there.
Yeah, good shout. I know we've talked about, who could you invest in the 6th position. I don't think we have to, because I think Archie Gray is absolutely a 6 for the club. That's where they see him long term, without a doubt. But he's doing a good job.
And it seems like Johnny's coming in summer, no matter what. So,
is that right?
That's what it seems like to me. Like I've been hearing some buzz about Johnny. Just like it seems like it. Why would they do it the summer before he's playing well, I guess, in Spain? So it seems like a foregone conclusion that he'll be at Spurs.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a smart move by the club. It's like, we got to get Lo Celso out of here. Here's somebody we've identified. We could potentially bring him in and loan him back, or we could just set ourselves up financially to be able to buy him easily next summer. So yeah, that's wonderful news to hear. I really like his profile. That also gives you more flexibility with Archie Gray, which I don't think a player like Archie Gray has to have a label that says they are a 6 for the club or they are a fullback for the club. Just like play wherever for as long as you want to. I don't care, right? That flexibility is fantastic, and he's great on the ball. And then with Bergvall, yeah, I think a lot was made in the media about him. He was very hyped up, and like if he was going to like Dortmund, and then we came in and swiped. Oh, I mean, me too, right? But if he was going to Dortmund and we came in and swooped him, it would be nothing, right? But because it was Barcelona carries the heaviest weight outside of Real Madrid on the planet, in my opinion, maybe equally the same, right? Excuse me. Yeah, excuse me. Geez. So yeah, I think there was just a lot of hype around Bergvall, and he was playing men's football. We know that, but in my opinion, whatever team he was on gets automatically relegated from the championship if they come and join the championship in their first season. So I'd love for him to go to the championship and get a loan if he's not able to get into the Premier League on a loan, and just start to get used to the pace of men's football in England, because it's a different beast, and he's 18 years old. So by no means Lucas Bergvall, if you're listening, do any of us have anything but the utmost belief in you. We just want you to play football, and I think that's the point of this conversation. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And as you said, we've got a lot of depth in the midfield.
Yeah, I had 3 quick tweets I wanted to pull in that I went back and found, because they're transfer rumor tweets. The first one is Tottenham are in talks over a potential free transfer swoop for Bayer Leverkusen center back Jonathan Tah. Never heard of him.
Really?
Yeah,
he played for Germany for a minute. Like he was
so he's one. The second one is Bournemouth star Ilya Zarbarny. I don't know how you say his name.
Zarbarny.
But apparently Bournemouth said we'll sell him for £50 million, and Tottenham is interested by that.
It's a bit much.
And then the third one that I just saw, I did not see this before. Apparently Tottenham has requested Yang comes in December. They've just like released a special request saying we want him now, basically.
Free us from Timo.
So,
yep. Well, and the season's over, I think, for the K-League, right? So
yeah,
why not? Yep. Just get him here. He's
buckle up.
Yep, let's go. Yeah, that's Zabarny. All I know is he gets incredibly good in Football Manager, so why not? He's young. That's an interesting one. Jonathan Tah was actually being floated around when we signed Van de Ven. Interestingly enough, it was him and Tapsoba were the two that we were very heavily interested in. And then all of a sudden Van de Ven comes out of nowhere, which thank goodness for that. But yeah, I mean, maybe there is some belief that Romero, could be out the door next summer if if we're linked to these types of profiles right now. I don't think Ange lives in a world where you need more than 4 center backs on your first team. So yeah, it's interesting links, and let the silly season commence. We're getting close. I love it. I know people think that the transfer window is just a heap of shit, but I thoroughly love it.
Oh, I love it so much.
My best buddy in the world, he's a big Juventus fan, just massive Juventus fan. But every time we were out growing up on New Year's, like at midnight, everyone's like, Happy New Year. And we're like, happy fucking transfer window. Like in the middle of the bar. It was always our thing. So I'm always stoked for it. And especially stoked because Spurs need to make some moves. That is a trap, by the way, for the listener, being a Spurs fan and getting excited that your team's going to do things in the window, but we'll see what happens. Last thing we want to talk about before we wrap, it's been a long one. We had a lot to catch up on. Just very briefly, and then we'll get to any academy or loan things that you'd like to discuss, Max. Probably not much on the loan front, maybe some academy guys that got international minutes. But again, before we do that, speaking of international, U.S. does take down Jamaica 1-0 in Kingston yesterday in the first leg of the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinal. Again, that was in Jamaica. Monday there is the second leg in St. Louis. Jamaica's one that is never guaranteed in CONCACAF for sure. So I think it was a good victory for the lads. Again, this is a Spurs pod, but the majority of us are here in the States and we're soccer fans. So just mention briefly, 5th-minute goal from Ricardo Pepi. Big moment for him because he's been on fire for PSV at this past weekend. He got his first start actually of the campaign for PSV and bagged 2 goals and recorded an assist, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 2 assists and a goal. But either way, he was involved in 3 goals at the weekend and then comes on in his first start under Mauricio Pochettino in the first competitive match under Poch and bags a goal in the 5th minute. So super happy for Pepe, especially because we're just asking tons of questions about who's going to be the 9 for this team going forward. And Flo Balogun is always there, but super stoked for Pepe. Beyond that, worth noting Matt Turner makes a penalty save. Also worth noting, Jamaica was not awarded a penalty. That was 1,000% a handball in the box. But the interesting thing about this call, Tim Ream takes the ball right off the arm, saves the goal with his arm, right? And they don't call the handball. The interesting thing is, and I should say it's like elbow, right? But VAR can't overturn the call because the camera had absolutely no angle that wasn't blocked by players. And so VAR deemed that it wasn't able to overturn a call because they didn't have the evidence to do so. So US just gets saved big time by some weird fluke in VAR that helped them overcome Jamaica 1-0 in Kingston. So good for Poch. He now actually has more. This is a crazy stat. He now has more away CONCACAF competitive wins than Greg Berhalter. And that's 1 for anyone who's counting. But super happy that Pochettino is here. Long may his reign continue. Go USA. Max, I'll pass it back over to you again. Probably not on the loan front, but before we do, these are brought to you, of course, by our sponsors, the Wits End, Rainier Growlers, and Cascades. What do you got for us?
Loan front, Leeds fans seem super unhappy with Manor Solomon. That's right. Manor Solomon is still at Spurs. So, terminate his contract. Brian Hill is on the Spanish national team. Yeah, the team that won the Euros. Brian Hill is a member of their chosen squad. So, he's still under contract. We still own him. Hey, welcome back potentially in January. Like, we need a guy like him as much as it pains me to say. And then lastly, Luka Williams-Barnett tearing it up for Spurs. He got the call up to the Europa League against Galatasaray, which I was super excited about because all season in this segment specifically, for those of you that stay to the end, I've been banging the drum and he got the call up. So he bagged another goal from half field the second time he's done that this year. And then he's getting the call up to England with Janai Byfield. Those 2 are the 2 to watch from that U18s group. Other than that, we'll be back with the more academy news once they kick off domestically again. So, yeah.
I just saw on Twitter Lancashire scored for the England U20s after coming on as a sub. So
Bang.
that's another
there you
update.
go. Hey, and shout out Will for his first debut goal. That was awesome to see.
Yep. Super happy for him. I don't care about the red card. He's
neither do I. No
just
one
playing
does.
passionate.
He's the only one that cares. So
yeah, exactly. And he gets a total free pass for that, in my opinion. So, yeah, that'll wrap it up here for episode 25 of Emerald and Lilywhite. Again, it's been a long one. We appreciate everybody who has stuck around. Had a lot to catch up on. If you can remember all the way back, we did talk about Spurs dropping results to Galatasaray and Ipswich. So we'll hope for better moving forward. But yeah, for myself, for Max, for Robbie, we appreciate everybody's time. You can find Max at Going Limbs. You can find Robbie at Robbie_Light, and with an asterisk at Twitter, Robbie Light. If you're listening, Robbie_Light on Twitter, please give your handle to Robbie to make my life a little bit easier here as the
just
host.
Just log into the app and check your DMs. I've messaged you for years. Just use the app.
You can find me at Scott G. Bird. You can find us at And Lilywhite on all social media platforms. You can find Seattle Spurs, the group that makes it all happen for us, at Seattle Spurs on all social media platforms. You can also email Seattle Spurs at gmail.com. You can subscribe to get email reminders for all sorts of things. That is holiday parties. That is match watches. That is what or which of our pub sponsors will be open for various matches. So a lot of good information comes through the Gmail. Make sure you sign up. And then, as always, make sure you like and subscribe to Emerald and Lilywhite. We appreciate everyone who does, as it helps us grow the Spurs platform in the city of Seattle. But I think that's it for us, episode 25. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.